Welcome everybody to our next Indie Game Spotlight recap. This is for the month of January 2020. As always, all the games you're seeing were submitted by developers. I'll include links to the relevant games in the description down below. And if you'd like to submit a game for a future Spotlight, please don't hesitate to get in touch. This first one is a game that was a Kickstarter demo that was sent to me, and this is the Wizard's Gamble. And developers describe this as a heavy metal 2D Souls-like. And the demo that was sent over was very limited, about 5 minutes of gameplay thereabout. I actually ran through a lot of it just by avoiding enemies. But the idea, I think what kind of has it be a little bit different is that there's a greater focus on combos and specific attacks you can make use of. And you see some of the combos up there as the dialogue box as I'm running by it. Unfortunately, the reason why I didn't include this in the official stream was I played it off recording, and there just wasn't, I think, enough there to show off, even as just a partial thing for the stream. But since developers were kind enough to send me a copy to look at, I did want to take a look at it. The basics, I would say, are coming together. But the game, I think, at the moment is really hard to tell, like, what their goal is, or what is going to be the major gameplay loop. Will there be exploration? Will there be a focus on platforming? As you can see, some of the graphics are a little hard to see as well. But at least the music is coming in. And the Kickstarter page described it as having, I think, some light Metroidvania aspects. You were going to grow in power and things along those lines. And none of that could have been seen, or none of that was seen during this demo. And you're going to see me just kind of ignore combat altogether because it's easier and safer just to really run away, run and dodge roll, with exception to those annoying little flying enemies. And if the developers want this to be more combat-oriented, I think they need to make the combat feel better in my hands. Because it just felt like I was kind of just mashing combos, and sometimes the enemy would just get through that attack. And with these kind of wizard guys who keep throwing fireballs, it's just a matter of using iframes for great victory. So, I think with that said though, at the moment the Kickstarter I think is over, and I do wish them the best of luck, but given how competitive I think 2D design is these days, we're going to have to, I think, see more of what they have in mind to really be able to render a verdict. And with that, let's move on to our next game. This is A Long Way Down, which is coming out in what seems like the endless wave of Slay the Spire inspired games. That was not easy to say either. And for this one, the game obviously features deck building and turn-based combat, but with a more, I think, focus on kind of the procedural generation as well as persistence. The story is that we are in limbo, and our spirit is trying to find its way out. And to do that, the master there is trying to stop us any way they can. The game is split into kind of two distinct systems. You have running around on the map here that is procedurally generated, and you'll use your tiles at the bottom of the screen to form walls and floors that you'll use to move around and either interact with enemies, find treasures, or set up traps to aid you. And after your turn, the master can place down one of the tiles as well to try and mess with you. Now, when either you run into an enemy or an enemy runs into you, you enter the turn-based combat of the game. And this is where kind of the similarities of Slay the Spire come into play. Your deck is consisting of 20 cards, 15 that you put into a deck, 1 for each piece of gear that your character wears, plus 1 for the weapon. And the game has a very strong emphasis on buffs and debuffs, as they all will stack. So you can weaken an enemy to the point that they will barely do any damage, or super boost your own attack to wipe them out quickly. Now, as you can see, combat here is turn-based, and while we only have one character now, the game hints at being able to have a party of 3. Now, this is where things get very tricky. Cards can be played provided as long as you have action points, the yellow diamonds you see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Your deck does not refresh during combat. This is a very big point, because it means that if you run out of cards, you will be unable to provide buffs or debuff enemies or remove their own enhancements. And the only way to bring the deck back at that point is refresh it at a cost of a good chunk of your health. And what this means is that from a deck building standpoint, you need a big deck in order to have any chance of winning these fights, especially against boss class enemies who have a huge enough health pool that they can easily burn through your cards if you have a full deck. And that takes us to kind of persistent element of the game. How this works is that whatever is in your bag is considered loot. And the only way to preserve it is to either beat the floor or exit through one of the portals and take you back to kind of the hub area. And the persistent element is definitely the major point about A Long Way Down. It's what makes it a roguelite, as you'll earn a powder by winning battles that you can use to enhance gear, upgrade your cards, craft new cards, or even duplicate cards in your deck that you can then use going forward. And considering the fact that you only can store 20 cards into a deck means that upgrades are going to be very important. There's also synergy, and you can see I'm kind of messing with the UI for this point, that there's also synergy when it comes to the weapon along with your cards, as your weapon has an elemental type, and if it matches the elemental type of a card, that card will do more damage. And as a roguelite, A Long Way Down does work in that respect. But the problem, what kind of makes it very frustrating for me, is twofold. There is a heavy emphasis on the persistence, and the game seems to be designed to force you to replay levels in order to gain the necessary powder or get lucky with card rewards in order to have any chance of winning. This boss, when we first saw him on stream, he kept buffing himself to the point that I couldn't do any damage, and I only had one card that removed that buff. So what ended up happening was that there was no way for me to do enough damage with my cards, and he did already so much damage to my health that I couldn't refresh my deck and survive, and there was literally no way for me to beat that fight. And that was very frustrating to run into, especially in a game like this where it is pretty much your entire deck is going to be your full strategy. And it made me wonder if there's going to be more fights and battles like that further into the game. Again, with A Long Way Down, the persistent element is the major focus of it. Unlike the run-based builds of stuff like Deck of Ashes, Slay the Spire, and again, the many other games that we played. And with that said, this game is still in early access, so there is a chance we'll see more balancing or things done in the future. But if you're looking for, again, more of that run-based focus, with the persistence adding more stuff to it, A Long Way Down I don't think is going to work for you. But as kind of built on that roguelite mentality of just keep on growing in power, which helps you move forward, and repeat again and again, it is not that bad. But it was not the kind of game that I was expecting to play when I first got the key for it. And with that said, we'll move on to our next game that kind of became, I think, the de facto winner of the spotlight this month. This is Brimstone Brawlers, a game that is very much in early development. I think this is the pre-early alpha build of the game. And the developer sent us a key to check, or sent us multiple keys to check this one out. And what we found was a team or kind of deathmatch style, almost like top-down combat kind of game. Definitely more action-based than something like League of Legends. And this was a game that we didn't really know what to expect going into it for the spotlight, but we ended up really enjoying it. Now again, I do have to emphasize the fact that this is pre-alpha build right now, so you're going to probably see like there's definitely a lot of missing textures and placeholder art. But the version that we have right now, the one that you're seeing, is entirely multiplayer based. Developers have said on their page that they want to do more with having single player content, story mode, player versus enemy play, stuff like that. What we're seeing here is all PvP. So the game lets you choose from multiple unique characters in the game. Each one, to the developer's credit, stands alone. They have their own unique abilities, their own ultimate, health, and kind of role. It definitely has kind of like that MOBA feel to it, as certain characters feel like they shine better in a group, while other ones are more like the one-on-one, they're going to kill you if they get too close. The guy that you're seeing right now is kind of like a buffer. He throws his various potions that do different things. If they hit a player or hit a teammate, they'll help them. Hit an enemy, it hurts them. There's also a boxer who gets power, or his moves augment as he kind of does his like little dash around to also avoid attacks. And the game itself has a really good feel to it. Now, with that said, there is one other thing to keep in mind. The game definitely is built around team versus team play. And I believe the developer said that they may be supporting, I think, 6v6 or 8v8 matches. What you're seeing right now is at most 2v2. And I don't think that's enough to really showcase the game. And we ran into some balance issues with if you were like two close range characters fighting a team with two long range, the long range guys could just effectively kite you around, and there's not much you can do about it. Again, the role of each character and their respective class is hard coded. Your melee guy is never going to get a range option. Range is never going to get a strong melee, and you get the picture. And it's going to be interesting to see going forward what they're going to do in terms of balance. Because I'm sure if I had the other guys that we were playing this with on for this recording, they would share their own thoughts on how they felt these characters went. But like I said, I really appreciate the fact that it didn't feel like there were any copycat or clone characters in the game. Everyone was unique, they each had their own special abilities, and it definitely shined or shone through with the gameplay. Now, looking at the store page of Brimstone Brawlers, again, they're promising a lot that we did not get a chance to see here. Besides the aforementioned PvE content, they're going for a microtransaction system based on new cosmetics, skins, things like that. Didn't seem like they were really doing anything in terms of buying microtransaction improvements or upgrades. Another thing that was missing is that there was placeholder graphics for talent trees, which it had us wondering if they're going to do something similar to League of Legends, where you can choose various passive perks, and that will allow you to further define a character as you see fit. And like we said, while there isn't a lot to the game right now, we certainly got our money's worth, and we only intended to play for like maybe 20-30 minutes. I think we went like a good hour and a half, almost 2 hours, with the 4 of us playing this game, and that is very impressive for a game that is not even in like alpha state yet. And we were commenting about that on the stream, that right now the fundamentals work, and if a game's fundamentals can work even at this state, it definitely has some potential, I think, going forward. And I'm going to be definitely keeping an eye on this one in terms of updates, and we'll probably throw this into the routine for our multiplayer nights if people want to see it. And yeah, like I said, like this became like the darling of the Spotlight stream. And with that said, we're going to do our quick Patreon supporter and sponsor shout-out break now, and then we'll get to probably will be the last game for this part of the Spotlight. And now for a quick shout-out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, link down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. For our next game, we turn to Orange Blood. This is a hip-hop infused JRPG that kind of reminds me a little bit of sort of like the contemporary or modern day design of Earthbound and some of the lesser known JRPGs that have been released. The game story involves these characters here, and there's a whole lot of profanity in terms of the dialogue in this game, and they are on a secret mission, with more things revealed as the story plays out. But the main thing about Orange Blood, first off, I really like kind of the pixel graphics. A lot of the background art and aesthetics really do pop. And the game itself takes place with its combat in turn-based, kind of again, all determined by turn order. On the dungeons themselves, the enemies move around in real time, and you're able to shoot or stagger them to get a first turn advantage. Each character will have different skills that they can use, as well as kind of their own abilities that can play passively. Like, the girl over there uses her boombox to provide one or two of different passive buffs. And the guns had different kind of bullet types to them. So assault rifles may be useful against one type, shotguns will be useful for another. And at its basic level, Orange Blood is not bad, but it's one of those the devil is in the detail kind of designs, as we found the game both to be very repetitive in terms of its gameplay, and the combat not really that involving. I got a shotgun here that does stun that seems to work on just about every normal enemy, and I was exploiting the heck out of that in the game. And the game throws, again, all manner of gear, different rarities, passives, elements, resistances you get at the player, and it doesn't really do, I think, a good job of explaining what all that actually means. And as you were playing through, we ran into cases where either I was just dominating every fight, or they were just ripping me apart. And there was definitely no difficulty settings in Orange Blood. I think we play this on whatever the default is. So it wasn't a case of, just raising the stats like that. The various dungeons, we only explored this first main one, is kept very sterile. There's a few things to find and explore, but it's just you kind of repeating the same basic environment floor by floor. I did like the idea of opening up those item boxes that I believe the gear is random, but I don't know for sure, and using the keys that you acquire from fighting enemies. And for this one, it was kind of hard to tell just how much is there to this game. From the store page, it looks like you can eventually get a party of up to 4 characters, and it felt like we definitely needed at least one more character, because combat just started to devolve very quickly. And at the end of our play, I was just completely devastated by the boss, and I didn't really see a way to get around it. And that's kind of like the weird thing about this game. Like I said, that either combat was too easy, or I was just getting killed left and right. And there's only a few spaces or a few places in the dungeons that you can save at any time. Otherwise, you'll go and return back to a previous save point. And yeah, again, it felt like one of those games that really wanted to follow a JRPG design, but I didn't really see more to it than that. And curious for people who did play this game, what their ultimate thoughts were on it. Because the presentation definitely works. I like even the hip-hop infused soundtrack. But it just felt like a very sterile JRPG otherwise. But with that, we're going to wrap up the spotlight for this part now. For our next part, we'll talk about even more of the indie games we took a look at. And as always, I would like to thank the developers for submitting games for our Spotlight streams. If you are working on an upcoming game, as long as it's in a playable build and you would like to submit it, please don't hesitate to get in touch. But that's going to do it for now. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design. And come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it. And tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.